Now, very happy to have back on Congressman Mark Pocan, a Democrat from Wisconsin, representing the 2nd District, serves in the House Appropriations Committee, co-founder and co-chair of the Labor Caucus, and has his podcast with Liberty and Justice for Some. Representative Pocan, how are you? Nice to see you.
I'm doing well. Thanks, Dean.
So there's a lot to cover. So let's squeeze in a lot of things. Let's start first. Obviously, the big headline news. There's two stories here. There's Trump sending the National Guard and your reaction. Then there's the other one. We'll talk about more of the continuing down the playbook of authoritarianism and fascism, which is a different thing. But what's your reaction to Donald Trump over the objections of Governor Newsom sending the National Guard? Now it seems like 4,000 we've heard called up to LA.
Yeah, I just wonder if, the producers from Celebrity Apprentice or somewhere are actually producing this for him because, this is a very limited run show. It's about 3 blocks in LA that this is happening. You keep seeing the same car that's on fire over and over on the news. And of course, no one should burn cars or create damage. That said, this is taking away from the conversation on the big, beautiful bill for billionaires, the cuts to Medicaid and health insurance, the cuts to food assistance, the cuts to Medicare, $500 billion that's in the bill. But if you're talking about this, unfortunately, Donald Trump's messaging is doing better in polling than the Democrats' messaging. So all Donald Trump wants to talk about is immigration, border, this. He likes to have the riots. He likes to talk about how bad this is. But the reality is this is a very, very small, limited 3-block area in LA. This is happening, but he's winning if we're not talking about his big, beautiful bill for billionaires. And that's why, this seems to be a produced, kind of distraction.
Yeah. And so, and I agree with you. And the challenge for Democrats is breaking through the media domination by Donald Trump and corporate media, which has just been almost irresponsible. Even some of the good people on their coverage, like LA riots, and that kind of stuff. Look, I want to also get your reaction. Donald Trump, I saw the release that 700 U.S. Marines who are war fighters, who are trained to kill, are being deployed. We've not seen footage of them yet on the street, so we don't know where they are, if they're en route or they've just been mobilized. But look, there are 24,000 National Guard troops in California. It's the biggest National Guard in the nation. Trump's only deployed 4,000. He could send more, but he did the U.S. Marines for a reason. Obviously, there's an optics reason what he wants.
Yeah.
How concerning is it to you that he is following the playbook of aspiring tyrants and dictators, apart from the big, we'll talk about the mega billionaires bill, but this is deeply concerning on a different level.
Well, and again, it's largely for show, right? That is the point. Even the people that he's already deployed, only 300, I think, are actually on the ground doing the job, because you can't have more than 300 people for the limited amount of territory this is actually happening in LA. So, but he loves, he's got his parade this weekend, right? Yes, it's honoring military. And, I think we should always honor those who've served our country. But, the fact that it happens to fall on Donald Trump's birthday, and maybe, Putin will jump out of a cake. I don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day, but this is him loving the style of authoritarians around the world.
And it is, and it kind of it builds to this military parade, which we don't have military parades in the United States because of our history as a country. We just don't. I wonder if Donald Trump truly doesn't get what it means to be American. And what I mean by that is, in our DNA as Americans, and I don't think I'm being naive or overly philosophical about this, we are taught from as children in school that we rebelled against the Mad King. We were taught that we fought for freedom. The colonists were brave and stood up to a superpower, and they would not let a mad king oppress them and suppress them. And Trump has I don't think Trump gets that. I think maybe born into wealth, he doesn't get that sense. Americans, it's against our DNA to accept a king, and Trump wants to be a king.
Yeah, and that's why this weekend on Saturday, there's literally hundreds of rallies around the country, no king rallies, just about that subject, because that is what Donald Trump wants to be. But, we can't ever allow that because it completely goes against our founding fathers, right? And the good news is the people who founded this country have done a great job with the rule of law. That's what's helping us right now. There's been over 185 positive adjudications in the 250 cases that have been filed against Donald Trump already. And he's largely the caver in chief. He caves every time they do this, and he might try to put up another lawsuit, but it's not like, other than a couple high profile cases where, again, he's trying to prove his point, that he's actually challenging them. So, we were founded on good reasons of not having a king, and we shouldn't acquiesce at this point.
I agree. I'm talking with Representative Mark Pocan. Is there any, and I don't know with the procedure of introducing resolutions in the House, you're in the minority. I don't even know if you can force a vote on them. But is there anything about condemning, like putting out a resolution to address what Trump is doing about sending the U.S. Marines, the U.S. military? Because I want our fellow Americans who aren't paying attention to understand Trump is sending the U.S. military into the streets of Los Angeles, not just the National Guard, the U.S. Marine Corps. This is not something that we can accept. I can tell you it's really worked up people on the base because we're already upset about the big bill. We're already there. But this is a different thing. And I don't know how you can do both things. You can talk about that bill and the threat of Donald Trump. I mean, is there anything more Democrats might do in the House?
The only thing we don't have the power of right now is the power to pass bills or resolutions, right? We have the bully pulpit. We can certainly go into Republican districts. We can go to Democratic districts. We can go on the media and talk about stuff, but they control the calendar. So probably the least productive thing that we can do, because it really is only kind of for show, unless you're trying to just do it to build support and show them how many people sign on. But we also do letters for those reasons. But what we just need to do is make sure that we're always doing the fight. We're thinking outside the box because those tools aren't there for us in the minority. Elections do have consequences. But, all the more reason why, I love the idea of going into more Republican districts and doing town halls because, the fact that they're not doing any tells you they're not proud of anything that's going on. And if they really were, they would actually take it to the people. So we need to do that. And that's why I love that tool.
And we haven't talked about a month, I think, or at least 3 weeks. Have you been doing any more, or have any members, fellow Democrats, been doing any more in Republican?
Yeah, my neighboring district, Derek Van Dorden, I feel like he needs my help the most because he's never done an open public town hall. So I did one a week ago Saturday in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and made sure that people up there had a chance to be heard, but also that it doesn't pass the smell test, right? I think sometimes people get lost on, is it 11 million people or 13 million people losing health insurance, and what numbers are you looking at? But the one thing everyone can understand is if you're really proud of a bill that's doing something, you'd talk about it. And if you're hiding in your basement instead, that doesn't pass the smell test. So at that point, it's not what number or who said what, but it's just common sense that that bill isn't good if they're not willing to actually go out and talk about it, or you're trying to distract people by what they're doing in California or anything else that's out there.
So what did you hear from people who attended that event, that town hall?
Yeah, I mean, people hate the bill as moving forward because, we know something like close to 14 million people will lose health care, plus millions more actually are going to lose it through the Affordable Care Act. And that often doesn't get talked about, but getting rid of those subsidies, they gave me an example in my district, a 60-year-old couple making 85,000 on the Affordable Care Act because of those premiums not being funded under their bill. They're going to have a $16,000 annual increase to their healthcare costs. 227% increase. So that's, more people losing health care. Then on the food assistance, 11 million people, they did little things in there. Dean, another thing doesn't get talked about that I find unbelievable. It used to be, you have to have work requirements, right, to get the supplemental nutrition assistance program, except for certain cases. It used to be a single parent with kids up to 18 kind of was one of the exceptions. Now it's a single parent with kids up to 8. At 8, I guess if you're old enough to work in the mine, you're old enough to maybe have to have your parent go work in order to get that $6.20 a day of food assistance for a hungry kid. But the fact that they lowered that from 18 to 8 says a whole lot about their pro-family agenda.
So is that the actual dollar amount? It's $6.20.
That's the food assistance from SNAP. It's $6.20 a day a person in food assistance. I did the SNAP challenge when I was a freshman, back when it was $31.50 for the week, so a little less, but $11 less, right? Not that much less. And I was an ornery MF. My office told me that they used the whole word, but the thing is, I got a bag of oranges. That was 20% of my budget. I had ramen noodles, I had peanut butter, I had a bad attitude, right? It was like really, really very little food dollars for food assistance, and to somehow claim that that single mother of an 8-year-old now should go out and work to get that. I mean, it's That, and then also another one, on nursing homes, 55% of seniors in nursing homes in Wisconsin are on Medicaid, and the number is larger in many parts of the country. They took away the staffing ratios for patients in nursing homes in the bill as well. So now you can, have far more people to a single staff person, which means people won't get the care in
Mhm.
nursing homes anymore either. So all these little things were snuck in. And don't forget the $500 billion cut to Medicare. How many times have you heard a Republican say, I'll never cut Medicare? Well, their mouth says one thing and their finger did something else when they voted, because they voted for a $500 billion cut to Medicare in that big, beautiful bill for billionaires.
And I want to come back to the Medicare part for a second. You mentioned the ACA. CNBC had a really good article today on the front page about that. They did a study. They were reporting on a study that there are more Republicans who get ACA subsidies than Democrats for whatever
Yeah.
reason. It's like
Well,
45% of the people are Republicans, so about 38% that are Democrats. And a lot of them are going to be, their health insurance is going to be in peril because they can't make up the gap in the ACA subsidy. They don't get health insurance anymore.
yeah, and that's the thing is, how many times did they try to get rid of it in previous sessions
Mhm.
outright with votes? This time they're killing it by taking away those extra subsidies. But that's going to be millions of people in addition to the 14 million losing it from Medicaid. Millions more lose it here. And then what's going to happen to rural hospitals and go down the ripple effects of what this has throughout the healthcare system, which means we all wind up paying a little more for healthcare in addition at the end of the day.
And so you going back to Medicare, look, that's not getting the press it should. And I think the media coverage has been really irresponsible because they'll note, well, this could be waived if they do a certain vote. But as if they have no idea of history. Republicans have wanted to end Medicare since LBJ signed it into law. If they can find a way to, oh, I'm sorry, cut 500 billion. We didn't know that was going to happen. They'll
Yeah.
do it. They need to be pressured. So can you tell people how real this is? That if they don't amend this bill, there will be a massive cut to Medicare.
I asked a Republican member yesterday who was on my flight from Wisconsin why they could put a line in there that could have got rid of it. They intentionally did not. He had no answer for why, but they could have very easily. They knew it prior to the bill being voted on. So they are all on record for a $500 billion cut. All I know is, when it comes to Social Security and Medicare, it's our damn money, right? We pay into it all our life out of our paychecks, and our employers pay out of, again, as a benefit to what we're doing for our work. If they steal that money, they have to pay consequences. If you steal something, the police arrest you, right? In this case, you get another campaign donation from Elon Musk, I guess, but we've got to make sure people understand that in the final hours, the final days of that bill, this happened. They did not stop it. It's the vote of every Republican, but three Republicans who didn't vote for the bill.
Yeah, so it's not fear mongering, folks. If this passes as written, there will be a $500 billion cut in
Yep.
funding to Medicare. And that will be painful to many, many Americans who are Medicare recipients who rely on it. You paid into it. So, and I think the media is doing, again, corporate media is fracturing as time goes on. I don't even know what cable news will look like in the future. In 5 years, there might not really be cable news. It'll just be all online, but
Mhm.
they're not, and that's up to Democrats. The challenge is for you guys to keep harping on that and making clear that this is very real. When you look at the big picture, Representative Pocan, look at Republicans' hostility towards everything Democrats have delivered: Social Security,
Yeah.
Medicare, Medicaid, CHIP, SNAP, and the ACA. That's what we've done proudly. Republicans have done tax cuts for the rich in the January 6th attack. That's what they've done. That's what they're known for.
Yeah.
So I don't, their hostility towards everything. Are they for anything? And I know Tom Hartman, he's your good friend too, talks of the challenge he's given people. Tell me one thing Republicans have done in the last few decades to help working class Americans. And there's nothing. There literally is nothing.
Which is why you go back to what we're seeing right now in California, because they understand the one thing they pull really well on, better than us, is on immigration. And again, not for the actual facts, but for the messaging on it. And when it comes to the things that people count on, healthcare, education funding, food assistance, I mean, these are core parts of what America is about, and Donald Trump is taking those away as he wants to be this authoritarian or king. And that's the message people have to really think about, because, no matter how racist you are, many of those folks that voted for Donald Trump are going to lose benefits right now. And is it really worth losing those benefits just so that, you can maintain the purity of the white race? I mean, that's the calculation people are going to have to make.
Well, it was very startling. Stephen Miller called what's going on in California a fight to save civilization.
Yeah.
So for some of them, but yeah, I mean, how much does owning the libs matter to you? Is it
Yeah.
enough for you not to be able to own food to eat or own a health insurance policy? You're owning the libs, but you don't own your own home anymore because the bank is foreclosed on it. Is that really? It's not a good place for America. So I wanted to touch on one last part of this bill so that people don't think it's spin, that it really will overwhelmingly benefit the wealthy and that they are going to get the biggest tax cuts in this bill. And the rest of us get crumbs or nothing.
So let me just give you one example, the tax on tips, right? First of all, that's 5% of low and moderate wage earners are people who get tips. So you're solving a problem at best for 5% of the group of people. Then 30% of the tipped employees don't pay federal income taxes because they don't make enough money anyway. So
Wow.
it helps so few people. If you take the tax for tips, the tax on overtime, the senior tax break, and the no tax on interest for autos, things that benefit real people as opposed to Donald Trump and Elon Musk, that's less than 5% of the bill, or about 5% of the bill. That's what you have to know. Almost all of the gains go to the very richest, and the bottom 40 percentile of folks pay more in this bill instead of less. So, that's what this bill is really about. And, I have not seen part of it is because we're still getting some of the numbers out of this, believe it or not. We don't have it all coming out of the House bill. But I think when we're able to really visually show that better to folks, hopefully they'll start understanding their self-interest on this.
Sure. And that's a great point. I get paid in tips at SiriusXM, by the way. That's
Yeah.
they tip me.
Right.
They hand me a $5
Yeah.
at the end of the week. Good week, Dean. Here's $10. Don't spend it all in one place. The so we look forward to hearing more about the bill. And you're right. There was so much coverage of the bill. Now the media loves the shiny object. So you've got what's going on in California. That looks like it's dying down. Whatever Trump wants to do, if he's sending out more troops and there's nothing to see, then the media is going to stop covering it. And I hope they will come back to the
Yeah.
bill. So, I mean, what's the frustration / challenge of Democrats to break through the media narrative? Or have you given up? Has there been a concerted effort by Democrats in the House to say, look, we're not going to get the media domination. We have to go to the places that reach people that are going to get the word out more, be it podcasts, shows like this, that kind of stuff. Like, what's the
Yep.
strategy?
And taking it to Republican districts, right? Local
Right.
media picks it up, right? And then people are seeing it in the news that they trust the most, right? The people that they actually know. But it is a huge challenge. And, I guess at some point we're gonna have to advise, Girl Scouts selling cookies to put a car on fire next to them, right? It's the only way they're gonna get a camera out to cover it. But it is ridiculous the amount of coverage for what the scale of what's happening in LA. Granted, anyone who's done this should be held accountable, just like anyone from January 6th. Although we know that story turned out a little different in the end. But we cannot lose focus on our pockets are being picked right now by Donald Trump so that make sure that anyone who has enough money to afford Mar-a-Lago is going to get a better tax break. So maybe they'll spend a little more money, at Mar-a-Lago at the end. But we are going to be negatively affected, and society is going to be negatively affected. I mean, if fewer people have healthcare, more people are going to walk around sick. That gives
Yeah.
everyone a better chance of getting sick, right? I mean, at some point, the self-interest of the racism has to go into the self-interest of economics. And if your family is not going to be better off because of this, you have to see who's doing this to you.
And so, excuse me, I'm chatting with Representative Mark Pocan. Last two things. The one I want to touch on is you're one of the main champions of a bill called the Bombs Act, which I
Yeah.
got an email today from the ADC, I think, Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee, in favor of it, and some other groups. Tell us a little bit about Block the Bombs Act, please.
Yeah, we're just saying, I mean, if for any offensive weapon sales to Israel, period, should be approved by Congress, right? We can't trust this president because we know he's transactional. We certainly can't trust Benjamin Netanyahu because he's a war criminal. And at minimum, Congress should have to take that vote. And if they have a majority, so be it. But, there should be more checks and balances. Watching what's going on, I never thought when October 7th happened, we would wind up to where we're at right now. And they're going to completely depopulate Gaza. They're going to completely cleanse folks from the land and watching them shoot people getting food assistance. Now they have a fake humanitarian group out there. I'm surprised it took them this long to think of that as an idea. But, you can no longer be silent because silence is complicity on this. and we need to do more aggressive things, especially on offensive weapons, because they're being used, unfortunately, under our name, and we have a right as Congress to have a say.
So, and I know there's some other co-sponsors or people I've had on my show many times. I think Representative Ramirez is one of the co-sponsors. Is Representative Omar? I can't remember. I was looking at the
I'm sure she is. I know Ramirez took the lead on it, so she deserves credit for the idea and for organizing folks. And I want to send her proper props on that because she did a really exceptional job on getting people together.
is that whenever you, I mean, is there ever sympathy among Republicans towards the Palestinians and what they're going through when we see the imagery from Gaza, which is something like out of World War One, but it's happening on our watch?
I think there's so much xenophobia over there, this anti-Muslim, racist sort of different tones that they have. I mean, some of the rhetoric from some of the newest people, like whoever took Matt Gaetz's, I think,
Randy Fine,
yeah, oh God,
horrible, horrible.
like it's like you took all the worst elements of Matt Gaetz and then combined it with, the guy, the family guy, and you wound up with this Ralph Fine guy. And he says some of the dumbest things that you could possibly say, but it's also the most inhumane things. I mean, human rights, unfortunately, not everyone cares about around here. And it's amazing to me as someone who's always cared about it. But right now, you would think there would be more compassion, and there's not.
No, and Randy Fine is a supremacist. I mean, he's
Yeah.
anti-Christian and anti-Muslim, and I don't know why he doesn't get called out for both sides of that. His comments about oppressing or ethnically cleansing Christians and Muslims from West Bank and Gaza is truly anti-Christian. It is, and I don't know why there's a pass for anti-Christian hate in Congress because you're dealing with the Middle East. Palestinian Christians don't matter, but they do. There's tens of thousands of Palestinian Christians
Yeah.
living all over the West Bank, and their lives are made worse simply because of their religion. Because they were Jewish, they would not be treated that way, but because they're Christian, they are. And it should be talked about. And at some point, I hope we get over that Rubicon where it's not Muslim versus Jews. It is this right-wing supremacist Jews of Netanyahu versus Christians and Muslims. And then you have a lot of progressive Jewish Israelis who want two states or at least truly compassionate and empathetic. But right now, there's a right-wing government there that is a supremacist government. Like white supremacy, they're religious supremacists. And Randy Fine's cut from that cloth. He's very awful. Like he
Yeah.
advocates the death of my family. Like
But the problem is there's like a race on that side to be more awful because Donald Trump will hug you more or invite you to Mar-a-Lago more. And so people who used to be normal, Nancy Mace, believe it or not, was mildly normal at one point. And now, she is off the charts crazy on most every issue, but it's a competition. It's how you can advance in the Republican Party because then you'll get that special recognition from Donald Trump that'll help you. And it's a tough period to be doing this. I'll tell you that.
I know you've said that before. It just gets, well, I mean, I do get a sense though, Democrats are finding their footing and you've got to get your message out where you can get it. We don't control the corporate media, and being in the minority, it makes it harder. So last thing, something that will get press is the No Kings protests
Yeah.
around the nation. I know they're having them in Wisconsin. How important is it, in your view, for people to get out there and we show the nation that we oppose Donald Trump and his right-wing agenda?
Well, and it also will get us back on focus of what he's doing, right? So that we're not letting him lead the discussion. So it's important to go to those. I'm doing one in Dodgeville, Wisconsin, in Iowa County. I think there's 22,000 people in the whole county, and I'm doing it in Dodgeville on Saturday, and then we have our state Democratic convention after that. But it's important, and just in my district alone, I think there's a half a dozen of these going on.
So this is important. People,
Yeah.
we'll be talking a lot on the show, people getting out there and doing their things. And look, when Democrats, if you get control of the House again, which I think you will after 2026,
Mhm.
then we can subpoena things. Then we can create media narratives that right now there are things beyond our power. And it's very frustrating for all of us. I have the same frustration. You have it too. It's not like you're immune to what
Yeah.
we're going through.
No, in fact, I think the members who are doing the most right now are the ones who actually have the exact same empathy as our constituents. We're pissed, we're upset, we're scared. Like those are all things you can have at the same time, depending on the issue. But that's why, we're doing so much and people want us to still do more. And I understand that sentiment as well. And largely, I think members are stepping up and doing it. So that, makes me happy. I just think the more creative we can be and the more their face we can be is important. And, we're going to be next week in the House. We'll be back in our districts again. I guarantee you there won't be a lot of Republican town halls, but wherever they go, make it a town hall. and a little bit after that, when there's 4th of July parades, can talk to people during 4th of July parades if they're not
Sure.
answering your questions, and make them have to respond, because at some point it's going to start to register what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, Nancy Mace had a town hall in the aisle of a convenience store because
Yes.
the constituent would ask her questions.
Yeah.
So you can be respectful, be civil, don't be rude. And that guy was respectful, and
Yeah.
she made it ugly and looked awful at the end. So they work for us, members of Congress. If they're your representative, you can ask them questions at any time. Just be civil, be respectful as you want. That's up to you. I'm from Jersey. Our definition of respectful might be slightly different, but
I would say take this opportunity to Jody Ernst every single Republican, right? Let them tell you that we're all going to die anyway. And
right.
then you'll know exactly why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for the time, my friend. It's always great
Yeah.
chatting with you.